Greetings and welcome from Hillcrest, and I hope this finds everyone safe and happy and your wine glasses full. As many of you know, for years now we've done wine videos, introductory wines and that, and we thought that we'd actually bring that to the wine club now as a nice way for me to maybe more personally introduce the wines, a little bit more kind of exciting in that, and maybe share some stories. And in this wine club release, I'm going to actually feature one wine, which is our Teroldego 2016. But the two other wines that we have are both first for us as well, and it's super exciting. One is what I call Peit Blanc, which is a Chardonnay Pinot Blanc blend inspired by a trip I took in 2009 to Hungary with Gabor Palatai, a local celebrity winemaker here for a period of time, and greetings, Gabor. As well as many of you remember our wine Jordi and our dear friend Jordi that we make Poboleda and Low Americano with in Priorat, Spain. We have a new wine, and one of the wines I was so impressed by that when we first went there I had no idea the potential of this area for this grape variety, but Priorat, northwest of Barcelona, Merlot. And it's a little bit like this area. When I came to Oregon, Merlot was definitely not on my radar, but as important as it is to try things that you want, it's also important to listen. And I would have to say Merlot, for those of you that are familiar with our right bank, is a truly stunning wine in Umpqua Valley. And it's one of the few places in the world that you get tremendous distinction and unique character from a grape that's usually very pleasing and very kind of easy. But to start off with, I want to really feature one wine that kind of speaks to the New World, speaks to our experience. That variety is called Teroldego, and the Italian wine version is called Teroldego Rotagliano, which is a region in Trentino, kind of the very, very north of Italy by the Dolomites, Bolzano, this kind of area. As you drop down out of the Alps, you get into a couple benchlands where you have these alluvial soils, where everything from small pebbles to big kind of polished rocks. And it looks a little bit glacial in ways, the soils, but they are alluvial. Where a variety is grown that just a few years ago there were only 200 acres of in the whole world. Today they're probably somewhere in the vicinity of maybe a couple thousand, still primarily anchored in northern Italy, but you've begun to see this variety Teroldego spread a little bit farther south into Tuscany, where it's used to blend, much like Syrah is. It's a variety of a lot of different personalities and richness and consistency, as well as it's made its way to the New World. I had the first opportunity to taste and kind of play with that variety down at Robert Mondavi, where we had a program of Italian varietals. So the first varieties that actually became famous in Northern California were Italian. You saw the Zinfandel come up during the gold rush in Sierra foothills primarily, move its way into the coastal valleys. You saw a little bit of the whites. You saw the Krug family, German family, come plant Riesling. You had Beringer and that. And then on the back end of that were a lot of people out of northern Italy. At one time, the largest winery in America was called Italian Swiss Colony. And you had a lot of people coming out of northern Italy that were wine producers. And actually there's a town in Sonoma County called Asti. And Asti is kind of the epicenter for Piemonte in northern Italy today, where Barbera, Barolo, Barbaresco and that are kind of sourced from. But anyway, getting back to Teroldego, Teroldego was a variety Mondavi began experimenting with, and for me it was the most successful thing of all the varieties that we tasted. It was a variety that had immense appeal. It was, you know, people oftentimes, you get a new variety, what is it? Because there are 4,000 to 8,000 grape varieties out there. It's a variety that kind of, I would say, triangulates instead of being a cross of two. It actually is related to one of the parents of Syrah, so there's a little bit of that. It has that kind of very plush, kind of rich, velvety softness to it. But unlike Syrah, it tends to be higher acidity, very kind of bright and fresh. I think of Zinfandel, tends to have more kind of complex fruit and very kind of punchy fruit, like Zinfandel, but it can also be quite phenolic. And phenolic is that kind of chunky, chewy, if you think about Petite Syrah, that kind of grippy character. I think the English use the term sinewy. That's very interesting. But it's like those things. And it's a variety that when I first tasted it, I went, wow, this is fantastic. It's one of the things I planted in my mind when we came to Oregon. And Scott, who's a dear friend and partner in Paul O'Brien Wineries, actually was able to source for me out of a winery he worked for that Mondavi had, La Familia de Robert Mondavi, Teroldego plant material. And so it was one of the first things that we planted, and we've used it on and off. And this is our second vintage of a straight bottle alone. We've used it to blend since about 2005, 2006. But anyway, I thought I'd walk you through the taste and the flavors. But before I do that, also related to Mondavi is the variety I mentioned how small the footprint it had. And it was considered kind of a forgotten area, the Teroldego Italiano plain. And I had the opportunity in the mid-90s, I got a call, I was at my desk at Mondavi, that there was a young lady from northern Italy that hadn't made any kind of an arrangement to visit, but wanted to spend a little bit of time. So I went down and introduced myself, and she ended up being really what is the mother, or the person that brought Teroldego to the forefront today. And talking to her, she was only probably 25 years old, and her name was Elisabetta Foradori, and Foradori is really the benchmark producer of Teroldego in the world today, and you will find her wines available in the States here. She talked about this grape variety and how opaque and rich and how she wanted to bring it out. And I think it speaks to what's happening in the world today, where you have many people that are in regions. You know, Italy, for example, has 2,800 grape varieties. There's so many little pockets, they're grapes, and they're young people that are inspired to take those varieties that are historically oftentimes very significant and bring those to the forefront and to show the unique. It's very easy to have the normal from around the world, but it's so unique to be able to kind of transport yourself in terms of thought and flavors in this. We see this with food. Those of you, I think most people love wine, love food. It's the same thing. And so Teroldego kind of takes you to a different place in time. To me, it shows me the diversity of Umpqua Valley. Once again, with a huge range of varieties, not only that we can grow, but that we can make very, very well. And that book has yet to be written. But anyway, I'd like to walk you through the Teroldego. So this is 2016 vintage. This comes from a vineyard I call Old Stones. And Old Stones is a vineyard that's on a bench up above the Umpqua River with beautiful stones. Sound familiar? And it tends to give the wine a great power and richness in that. And you'll see from the color here, the color is, it's not opaque and really black the way Petite Syrah might be, but it's a very, very, very dark red. As the wines age, you get like almost like classic Bordeaux. You get what they call a bricky brown kind of edge to it, but very deep, kind of, as I mentioned, kind of sinewy in that. But actually, one of the things that defines really beautiful wines to me is wines that greet you. So some wines you put your nose in and you have to kind of draw it out, and it can be very beautiful. Other wines, as you're coming at the wine kind of before you expect it, you get beautiful perfume. And this has a beautiful perfume of like black fruit, like sweet black fruit, almost like Santa Rosa plum when you first kind of bite through the skin and you get that pop of perfume a little bit. There's also a nice kind of, with the French call pain gris, which is like a grilled, kind of a sweetened kind of fruit character to it. There's a little bit almost like a lead pencil, which is a little bit of wood. You know, this is 2016 vintage again. I mean, a lot of people are bottling their 2019s and sold out of 2016 years ago. The great wines of the world historically by law were 4 years in barrel, 1 year in bottle before you could sell them. And so in the modern world, we've abbreviated that, and the old world's doing the same thing. But there's such a difference between wines that have spent, 10 months in barrel versus maybe 3 years in barrel. There's more integration. It's like food, more integration, more complexity. On the palate, the wine is very kind of deep and rich, but fresh, which is nice. That's beautiful, beautiful acid. Still very long. The fruit, I still taste this beautiful kind of sweet fruit. I get a little bit of that kind of sinewy character on the sides, and super persistent. One of the things that you don't think about, but that you recognize, is the wines that you tend to drink and reach for more. Actually, texture and mouthfeel is a big part of that. We oftentimes talk about smell, but cultures that drink a lot of wine, the winemakers will oftentimes talk about, if you give them, 10 minutes to describe a wine, maybe 9 minutes is about texture and 1 minute about aromatics. And this wine is very long. I still get the fruit. Little bit of wood kind of intertwined in there. Some French oak I use, just about 20. And that kind of frames it almost like a picture frame, but super, super long. Anyway, this is a complex one. This is one that kind of rides both styles. It's complex, almost a little bit deep like Cabernet Sauvignon in terms of what I'm tasting this morning, but also wine of beautiful freshness and very supple. So I think I look forward to seeing this variety over a very long period of time. There's so many things you can do with it. I've made a little bit of rosé from it, and we look forward to playing with this in different pockets of Umpqua Valley. To me, it's the most exciting grape in Umpqua Valley that starts with a T. So anyway, to the genie in the bottle, and be safe.